Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from We Butter the Bread with Butter, Das album, out September 24th on AFM Records. This album has 13 tracks, 41 minutes in length, and this is the band's fifth full-length studio album. They are a German metalcore, deathcore band. Now this album has a very interesting characteristic as far as the overall construction is concerned. At first glance, when you navigate through this record, you have a sense of an album that doesn't pause, that doesn't break, very heavy, very powerful, always coming at you, very dynamic, with a lot of movement. And that's one of the great characteristics of this structure, is that it really allows the album to feel fluid, and it engages the listener from the beginning all the way to the end by not allowing you to want to leave the ride that you're on. So you're really connected with the album, and the album just flies by. By the time you get to the end of the record, you're ready to press play again, because it doesn't really seem like you worked your way through it. It just kind of went so quickly from song to song that you almost didn't catch enough of it to really have a grasp of what the album is about. So that's a great element, because it makes you come back to it time and time again, which is exactly what the band wants for its listeners. But when you dive deeper into the structure, you start to see some songs in the middle portion of the record that do offer some pauses, that do offer some breaks. It's just that the breaks are so little, these pauses are so minuscule, that the overall power and intensity and aggression and heaviness of the album overpowers them, and you almost forget about them by the time you reach the end of the album. So that's kind of the structure that they put together for this album, one that I really like because it ignites the experience and it really plays off of the overall soundscape that this record has. One that was a lot heavier than I was expecting coming in. I mean, I was expecting the album to have heaviness, but I was expecting the electronic side of the band to kind of overshadow everything else. And it was actually the other way around. The heaviness of the album overshadows everything else that is happening, and the electronic side of the band becomes just a layer within the soundscape. This is an album that has a very rich sound, really well defined. You could feel all the different layers of everything that's coming in to the picture on every single track. It has a large footprint, it feels big, it feels thick, it has a nice volume to it, and all of that comes from all of these different layers coming together and intertwining with one another in order for the songs to be as rich as possible, but still be driven, still be fun, still be bouncy. And within that soundscape, you really see two pillars, or two different motors that are pulling the album towards the same destination, and that is the electronic elements and the guitars. These are the two heartbeats of this album. The electronic elements are really interesting because they come at you from different angles and they always offer a different perspective, but they're so well intertwined in the overall design of the songs that there are some tracks that you almost forget about them because they just become part of the overall atmosphere, part of the overall soundscape, and you're more concentrating on what's happening from the guitar side. And then you have some tracks where the guitars fall into that same category by dropping a little bit more, and you're so focused on what the electronic elements are doing because they're driving the experience of the songs that you almost forget about the heaviness and what the guitars are doing. So really interesting way of alternating, sometimes mixing them together and giving to you at the same amount, but a really nice way to make a soundscape feel as volatile and as controlled at the same time, because you see these ebbs and flows that are happening, these transitions that are happening between the electronic side and the heavier side of the band. And all of these transitions happen so smoothly and so frequently, you almost get lost in it. But the way that they designed the record still allows you to understand exactly what's happening and allows you to really dissect both sides of the band and both sides of the soundscape that this record has to offer. On top of that, you have vocals that are as dynamic, that are as eclectic as the sound itself on the record. I really felt like the vocals on this album went whatever the songs were going. It's not like they try to control the tracks or they try to put borders or boundaries in terms of where the songs needed to go or how the songs were constructed. No, the vocals just went exactly where you needed them to go. When you needed clean vocals to bring more of a melancholic sense or to make more of a party style atmosphere, they were there. When you needed them to be a little bit heavier, a little bit more gruntier, a little bit more crisp with some raspiness to them, they were there. When you needed them to be absolutely demonic and brutal, they were also there. So it's an album that vocally really matches the intensity, the aggression, and the overall design of the individual songs and the record itself. Overall, this is a very interesting album. I had such a fun time listening to this record. And I think the main thing that I took away from the album is that you almost forget that you're listening to this record. It's an album that doesn't require a lot of attention from the listener, that it doesn't require you to dive really deep into these songs in order for you to understand what the master plan is behind the record. No, you just need to press play, sit back, listen, enjoy the sound, enjoy the vocals, enjoy the songs, enjoy the journey that you're going to be taken on, and just go with it. Just go where the album takes you, go where these tracks take you. It's a fun, heavy, brutal record at times, and like I said before, that part really surprised me, how heavy and how brutal this album becomes within certain songs, within certain parameters. As far as my favorite tracks are concerned, I want to go with Jump and Run. I like the video game intro. The electronic elements kind of create this video game vibe as the intro to the song, and the beauty about that is that those elements stay present throughout the track. It's not like they just threw this in the intro and then you never hear them again. No, they're at the intro, but then they become a little bit of a layer, a thin layer, if you will, at times within the song itself, but it adds volume and it makes that piece of the song connect with the rest of the track, which for me, it's really important. I like to feel like there's a red line, not just throughout the record, but throughout a song itself. So using this in the intro, keeping it as a layer, was a very important element. The song then becomes a little bit more heavy once you pass that intro. It starts to pick up brutality as well, and that portion of the soundscape of the band takes over the electronic side. The electronic side really becomes hidden underneath all of the heaviness and brutality that this song carries. You can still feel it, you can still see it, you can still hear it, but it's just more of a layer than anything else. This track really becomes about the heaviness of the sound and the heaviness of the vocals, and that really propels the track forward and propels you within the track as well. Incredible song, a song that evolves, that grows, that morphs, that becomes bigger as you progress down the line. Next you have Piks Mich, a song that almost feels out of place at times in terms of the elements that were brought into it. But when you start to look at the bigger picture of the album, this is a track that's really important because he uses the same elements that you heard before, he uses the same elements that you'll hear after, introduces a few new ones like a cello, but it's enough to really change your perception of where you are. So while not pausing the album or not being a song that really breaks the record, is a song that offers you some new elements to digest, and that's enough to kind of change your perception of where you're going with this album. So it's a song that in my opinion is really important from that perspective. The fly moving around at the beginning, the cellos kind of coming in to give the song a somber vibe, really important once again. And then even more important, the same thing that I said about the video game intro and Jump and Run, the cellos, the same thing. They come back again into the track in order to give you a sense of continuity, to show you that this was not just an element at the beginning, this is an element that becomes part of the DNA of this song. So I really like that aspect. The vocals also help to create some ebbs and flows because musically I felt perhaps the song that was a little bit more constant, at least in the verses. So the vocals really are needed in order to create some peaks and valleys within the more flat portions of the song. Once you get into the chorus is super bouncy, it's super fun, super lighthearted, a track that becomes a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde between what you got in the verses and what you get in the chorus. The verses are more somber, more dark, heavier, with the ebbs and flows happening more vocally than musically, and then once you get into the chorus, the song completely changes, goes 180, and becomes almost a party song with a much different atmosphere. I really like this Jekyll and Hyde because it's present there, not just musically, but also vocally. Last but not least, Metal, which I think is the most metal song on this album from the start. Heavy, melodic, but heavy, brutal, with a lot of volume, a lot of thickness. The guitars sound superb on this track. They're so chunky, they have so much volume. The vocals are absolutely insane. A really wide range as far as the vocals are concerned, but a range that stays very brutal and very heavy throughout. A song that stays engaging at the same time because you just feel connected with the movement, you feel connected with the heavier side of the band on this track. It just feels almost like a more pure deathcore song from the beginning into the end. And the vocals become even more brutal and aggressive as the track progresses. The sound as well, but not as noticeable as the vocals are as far as that progression of aggression. This is it. We butter the bread with butter. Das Album. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.